Nobody attacked humans anymore, and the one commander stupid enough to ask why became the answer. I was standing on the command deck of the Varnathi cruiser Black Talon when Commander Varek Thorn said the forbidden sentence out loud, in front of his officers, his weapons crew, and every nervous fool close enough to hear it. Why are humans never attacked? The bridge went quiet so fast, even the engines seemed embarrassed. That question had lived in the back of every military academy, every pirate den, every imperial strategy room for 200 years, but civilized beings did not say it out loud. We attacked mining colonies, trade convoys, border moons, rival fleets, smugglers, monarchs, diplomats, and once, by clerical accident, a planet full of librarians. But human ships? No. Human stations? Never. Human children? The kind of mistake entire governments spent centuries not making. Varek looked around the bridge and smiled like he had discovered courage instead of stupidity. He was nearly 8 feet tall, armored in ceremonial gray plating, with the kind of voice that made young soldiers stand straighter and old soldiers check escape routes. "Look at you," he said. A bridge full of trained officers afraid of mammals who still cook food over open flame for recreation. A few cadets laughed because cadets are born without survival instincts. Senior advisor Rel did not laugh. Rel was old enough to remember the last border incident involving Earth, and old enough to know why nobody called it a war. He stepped forward, his silver throat frills tight against his neck. "Commander, the lane ahead is registered human civilian transit. We should alter course by 3 degrees and continue patrol." Varek stared at him. Alter course for one cargo ship. The main display magnified the target. It was small, ugly, and painfully human. White hull, blue identification stripe. No visible cannons. No escort. No shield flare strong enough to impress a farming drone. Its registry read Cedar Falls, Earth Relief Logistics, crew count 11. A medical supply hauler. The kind of vessel any half-starved pirate crew would normally swallow whole before breakfast. And yet every criminal beacon in the sector had given it 40,000 miles of empty space, as if the ship carried a plague with manners. Varek leaned closer to the display. "Scan for weapons. Minimal defensive systems," the tactical officer reported. "Point defense only. Civilian grade. Military support. None detected. Hidden fleet. None." Varek turned slowly, letting the silence thicken. "There. That is the great human terror. A tin can with a medical logo." Rel's voice dropped. "Commander, with respect, humans do not need to look dangerous." That made Varek laugh. Not a polite laugh. A public one. The kind meant to punish caution. Fire a warning shot across their bow. My stomach went cold. The weapons officer hesitated just long enough to prove he had a brain, then obeyed just fast enough to prove he valued his career more than his future. A thin bolt of blue light crossed the darkness in front of the human ship, bright, clean, and intentionally harmless. The Cedar Falls did not panic. It did not accelerate. It did not send a distress scream. It simply slowed, rotated toward us, and opened a communication channel. A human male appeared on the screen, white, about 6 feet tall, brown hair, work jacket, calm eyes. Holding a coffee mug like this was an inconvenience at an airport. He looked at Varek, then at the weapons readout blinking behind him, and said, "You really need to think very carefully about what you do next." For a moment, nobody on the Black Talon moved, because the human had just done something no civilian under a Varnathi targeting lock was supposed to do. He had sounded annoyed. Not terrified. Not desperate. Annoyed, like Commander Varek Thorn had double-parked outside his favorite coffee shop. The translation system labeled his tone as calm advisory, which was the first time I had ever seen a machine try to protect an officer from embarrassment. Varek leaned back in his command chair, one claw tapping the armrest. "Identify yourself," he said. The human set his coffee mug down somewhere off-screen, slow and careful, as if hot beverages deserved more respect than warships. "Ryan Walker," he answered. "Relief Logistics Coordinator, Earth. Civilian vessel Cedar Falls. You just fired across a registered medical supply route." The tactical display pulled his personnel record from open transit databases. Male. Human. United States origin. Age 37 Earth years. 6 feet 1 inch tall. 205 pounds. White skin. Brown hair. Blue eyes. No active military rank listed. No visible armor. No advanced implants. No external weapon signatures. In other words, by every measurement our systems understood, Ryan Walker was not a threat. That was the problem with our systems. They understood metal. They understood radiation. They understood heat blooms, shield density, plasma charge, missile locks, and engine output. They did not understand posture. They did not understand stillness. They did not understand why an unarmed human, alone on a small freighter, could look directly at a cruiser carrying 400 trained soldiers and somehow make the room feel smaller. Varric saw only the database. A cargo clerk, he said, loud enough for the bridge crew to enjoy. The legendary human defense begins with a cargo clerk. A few officers laughed. Less than before. On the human screen behind Ryan, I could see part of the Cedar Falls cargo bay. It was painfully ordinary. Stacked white medical crates. Emergency blankets. Water filtration units. Boxes marked for pediatric clinics on some border colony that probably had no idea how close its medicine had come to becoming a political disaster. There were magnetic straps on the floor, a dented toolbox on a workbench, and an American flag patch stitched onto Ryan's old brown jacket. Nothing about him looked ceremonial. Nothing looked heroic. He had the tired face of a man who had been awake too early, trusted caffeine too much, and expected other adults to behave like adults. "Commander," Senior Advisor Rel said quietly, "the human has identified the vessel as medical relief. We should apologize and withdraw." Varric turned one eye toward him. "You are embarrassing yourself." Ryan heard that. His gaze shifted, not to Varric, but to Rel. Just for a second. A tiny nod. An acknowledgement. Almost gratitude. Then he looked back at the commander. "Last chance." Ryan said, "Turn around. File this as a censor error, and everyone gets to pretend this was a long, boring Tuesday." That should have been enough. Any officer with a functioning survival instinct would have taken the gift. Varric smiled instead. "Boarding Team 1, he ordered. "Prepare to inspect the human vessel." Ryan closed his eyes for half a second, like a teacher hearing the wrong answer from a very confident student. Then he reached off screen, picked up his coffee mug again, and said, "All right. I tried." The boarding order should have ended with applause, but it did not. That was the first crack in Commander Varric Thorne's performance. Varnathi officers loved bold commands. They loved clean intimidation, loud engines, polished armor, and the wonderful fantasy that history existed mainly to make them look impressive. Yet when Varric ordered Boarding Team 1 to cross into the Cedar Falls, the bridge answered with silence. Not refusal. Nobody was that brave. Just silence. The kind that gathers under closed doors before a storm. On the main display, Ryan Walker had already stepped away from the communication screen, but the channel remained open. We could still see the edge of the cargo bay behind him. White crates. Yellow straps. A swinging overhead light. The ordinary details made everything worse. It did not look like a battlefield. It looked like a warehouse behind a grocery store in Ohio. That was the human trick, I would later understand. They made dangerous moments look boring until you relaxed inside them. Senior Advisor Rel moved closer to the command chair, lowering his voice so only the forward crew could hear. Unfortunately, I was communications officer, which meant I heard everything worth regretting. "Commander, before the team launches, I request permission to place one historical file on your screen." Varric did not look at him. "Denied. It is 34 seconds long." "Denied. It is the reason your instructors told you never to test a human response chain." Varric's claws stopped tapping. That got his attention, and worse, it got everyone else's. He turned slowly, wearing that thin smile commanders use when they are deciding whether to punish wisdom in public. "Response chain," he repeated. Another ghost phrase. Rel swallowed. His throat frills folded tight, almost flat. Not a ghost phrase. A doctrine. The bridge lights glowed pale blue across his old scales, making him look tired, fragile, and terribly sane. Humans do not defend territory the way we do. They defend people. One ship, one worker, one child, one medic, one lost civilian. The scale does not matter to them. Their reaction begins at the individual and expands outward faster than command structures can interpret. Varric laughed under his breath. "Poetry. Military analysis," Rel said. "From 12 governments that no longer command their original borders." That landed badly. A few officers looked down at their stations. The weapons crew suddenly became fascinated by harmless numbers. Even the junior cadets stopped smiling. Varric noticed, and pride did what pride always does when it feels cornered. It reached for something sharp. Launched the boarding shuttle. The hangar feed appeared on screen. 6 Varnathi Marines marched toward the shuttle in sealed inspection armor. Not war armor. Varric wanted everyone to notice that. Inspection armor. Light plating. Restraint tools. Signal dampeners. Enough equipment to dominate a civilian vessel without making the official report sound dramatic. Their leader, Lieutenant Kaur, paused at the hatch and rolled his shoulders as if preparing for a training exercise. Target appears compliant, he reported. No defensive movement detected. On the open channel, Ryan's voice drifted from somewhere inside the cargo bay. Calm. Clear. Almost bored. For the record, I am asking all armed visitors to remain outside my ship. Lieutenant Kaur looked back toward his squad and clicked his mandibles in amusement. Varric leaned toward the display. Request denied. There was a short pause. Then Ryan answered. That is going to be inconvenient for you. Kaur laughed. The shuttle detached from the black talon and crossed the dark gap toward the Cedar Falls. It took 90 seconds. 90 very quiet seconds. Halfway across, Rel whispered something so softly the translator almost missed it. They always give one warning. I looked at the human cargo bay again. Ryan Walker walked back into view. He was still holding the coffee mug. With his other hand, he moved a stack of medical crates away from the airlock door, not hurried, not afraid. Just clearing space like a man preparing his garage before helping a neighbor move furniture. Then he looked up at the camera and gave the smallest, saddest smile I had ever seen. All right, he said. Nobody say I rushed this. The boarding shuttle sealed against the Cedar Falls with a dull metallic kiss. And that was the moment every superstition on the Black Talon stopped feeling old and started feeling useful. Lieutenant Kaur announced hard dock, then ordered the outer latch open with the confidence of someone who believed a door was just a door. The Cedar Falls did not resist. No alarm screamed. No hidden turrets appeared. No dramatic human weapon spun from the ceiling. The airlock simply opened into a clean, narrow passage lit by soft white strips and marked with boring safety labels written in English. Watch your step. Authorized personnel only. Secure loose cargo before launch. Somehow, those little labels made the corridor feel more threatening than a fortress gate. Kaur entered first, 6 feet of Varnathi muscle wrapped in matte inspection armor, followed by 5 Marines moving in perfect formation. Their helmet cameras fed directly to our bridge display. I watched through their eyes as they crossed the threshold into the human ship, boots clicking against gray floor panels. The ship smelled sterile, according to their suit readouts. Medical plastic. Recycled air. Coffee. Human coffee registered as a mild chemical hazard in 3 species and a breakfast beverage in 1 species that should have concerned us more. Ryan Walker stood 20 feet ahead in the cargo bay, exactly where we had last seen him, beside a row of white crates labeled antibiotics, infant hydration packs, and emergency burn dressings. His coffee mug sat on top of one crate. His hands were empty. His shoulders were relaxed. He had taken off his brown jacket and hung it neatly over a railing, revealing a plain dark shirt beneath. No armor. No insignia. No heroic pose. Just a man who looked like he had been interrupted during inventory. Lieutenant Kaur raised one restraint device. Step away from the cargo and place both hands behind your head. Ryan looked at the device, then at Kaur, then at the 5 Marines behind him. You are standing on a civilian medical vessel, he said. You are armed. You are being recorded. And I have asked you not to come in here. Kaur's mandibles flexed in amusement. Human, you are not in control of this inspection. Ryan nodded slowly, almost thoughtfully. That is the part you keep getting wrong. On the bridge, Varric leaned forward, hungry for humiliation. Detain him. Kaur moved first, reaching for Ryan's shoulder with one armored hand. It was not a strike. It was not even a serious attack. It was the casual shove of a larger creature correcting a smaller one. That made what happened next worse. Ryan shifted half a step. Not backward. Not away. Inside the movement. His left hand touched Kaur's wrist. His right hand pressed against the elbow joint of the armor, and Kaur's entire suit made a confused warning sound. The big Varnathi froze in place. Not injured. Not thrown. Simply locked by physics he had not expected to meet in a cargo bay. Ryan spoke softly, close enough for Core's helmet microphone to catch every word. You grabbed the wrong species. The second Marine rushed forward. Ryan turned Core gently, using him as a moving wall, and the second Marine stumbled into his own teammate. The third tried to flank left, but Ryan stepped over a cargo strap, tugged it loose with one hand, and used it to trip the suit's balance sensors. The Marine went down in a controlled slide, more embarrassed than hurt. The fourth and fifth hesitated. That hesitation told the whole bridge the truth before anyone wanted to say it. Ryan Walker was not fighting like a soldier. He was managing a problem. Calm hands, small movements, no wasted breath, no anger. He disarmed restraint tools, redirected momentum, shut down armor joints with pressure and timing, and kept every medical crate untouched. 20 seconds after the first contact, all 6 Varnathi Marines were on the floor, conscious, restrained with their own magnetic cuffs, and staring up at the ceiling like the ceiling owed them an explanation. Ryan picked up his coffee mug, checked that it had not spilled, and looked straight into Core's helmet camera. "Commander Thorne," he said, "please tell me you brought someone smarter." The silence after Ryan Walker's question did not feel like defeat yet. Defeat has weight. Defeat has paperwork. Defeat has grieving relatives and official statements written by people who were not in the room. What filled the bridge of the Black Talon was worse because it still had choices inside it. Commander Varric Thorne could have ended the incident there. He could have called the boarding team's failure a misunderstanding, blamed faulty armor locks, blamed human cargo straps, blamed literally anything except his own ego. Senior Advisor Rel even gave him the path. "Commander," he said carefully, "our personnel are alive and restrained. The human has used minimum force. This is an opening to de-escalate." Varric did not answer. He was watching the helmet feed from Lieutenant Core, watching Ryan stand among 6 trained Marines as if he had just organized a messy storage closet. The human had not raised his voice. That was what made it unbearable. If Ryan had shouted, Varric could have called him savage. If Ryan had celebrated, Varric could have called him arrogant. But Ryan simply waited, calm, polite, and very inconvenient. The bridge crew understood the humiliation before Varric admitted it. A civilian logistics coordinator had just handled a Varnathi boarding team on a medical freighter without damaging the medicine. That was not just a tactical problem. That was a story. And military officers fear stories more than missiles, because missiles stop at shields. Stories get into academies. Varric stood slowly. "Open a channel to Champion Draxon." Rel's eyes widened. "Commander, no. There are names on a warship that change the temperature when spoken. Draxon was one of them. He was not part of the inspection crew. He was not security. He was Varric's personal champion, a Varnathi honor fighter raised under 3 times standard gravity, nearly 8 feet. Tall, broad as a cargo loader, trained since childhood to make problems stop being discussed. He had won ceremonial contests across 12 sectors. He had bent reinforced training bars during demonstrations. He had once held a blast door open long enough for an evacuation team to escape, and he never let anyone forget it. Varric liked him because Draxon made subtlety unnecessary. The champion appeared on a side display, already smiling. "You called, Commander?" "The human has embarrassed my Marines," Varric said. "Retrieve them, then bring him to my bridge." Draxon's smile widened. "Alive." Varric glanced at Rel, enjoying the discomfort. Unharmed if possible. On the Cedar Falls, Ryan seemed to hear the shift in the air even before the new shuttle launched. He looked down at Lieutenant Core, who was still cuffed to his own armor harness. "That your boss making another mistake?" Core said nothing. Ryan nodded like the silence had answered. Then he walked to the cargo bay wall and tapped a small control panel. The deck lights changed from soft white to amber. Warning text appeared across the open feed. "Local gravity calibration mode. Earth standard training profile." I stared at the readout because it made no sense. Civilian medical haulers did not need training gravity. Relief logistics coordinators did not need combat calibration menus hidden beside first aid supplies. Ryan rolled his shoulders once, picked up his brown jacket, folded it, and placed it safely beside the coffee mug. "For whoever is coming next," he said, looking into the camera. "This ship is carrying medication for children. Please do not make me protect it harder." The champion's shuttle crossed the distance in less than a minute. This time, nobody on our bridge laughed. Even Varric stayed quiet. Draxon entered through the same airlock, ducking under the frame, armor plates brushing both sides of the narrow human corridor. His boots hit the deck with heavy confidence. The gravity shifted. Not dramatically, not enough to frighten a human, but enough for Draxon's first step to land slightly wrong. Ryan noticed. Of course he did. You feel that? He asked. Draxon flexed his hands. I feel nothing. Ryan gave him a tired little smile. That is usually when people should worry. Draxon crossed the cargo bay like a walking argument against common sense. Every step made the floor panels complain, not because he was careless, but because the human ship had not been designed for someone who treated doorways as personal insults. He looked at the restrained Marines, then at Ryan Walker, then at the untouched medical crates behind him. That was the part that confused the champion. He had expected fear. He had expected pleading. He had expected the human to hide behind cargo or reach for some clever little device. Instead, Ryan stood in the open with his hands empty, feet shoulder-width apart, breathing steady, eyes calm enough to be disrespectful. You are smaller than the report suggested, Draxon said. Ryan glanced at the ceiling camera. Your report was generous. A few officers on the Black Talon reacted before they could stop themselves. Not laughter. Something closer to disbelief, trying not to become panic. Commander Varek gripped the arms of his chair hard enough for the metal to creak. Champion, end this inspection. Draxon rolled his neck, and the armor along his shoulders shifted into combat alignment. Human, kneel. Ryan sighed. Not dramatically. Not heroically. Just the sigh of an American dad realizing someone had ignored the clearly printed instructions on a barbecue grill. I am going to say this one more time, he said. Those crates are going to kids. You step past me. This becomes a very bad memory for you. Draxon smiled and charged. That was the moment our bridge learned the difference between strength and movement. Draxon was fast for his size, faster than any creature that large had a right to be, but Ryan moved like he had already watched the attempt in his head and found it boring. He shifted 2 inches to the right. 2 inches. Draxon's armored hand passed through empty air, and his own momentum carried him onto the amber-marked floor strip Ryan had cleared earlier. The gravity calibration pulsed. Draxon's knees dipped. Not much. Just enough. Ryan stepped in, placed one palm against the champion's chest plate, hooked 1 foot behind his ankle, and turned. The movement was so small I almost missed it. The result was not small. Draxon hit the deck flat on his back with a sound like a vending machine losing an argument. The cargo bay went still. The bridge went worse than still. Ryan looked down at him. That was balance, he said. Draxon roared and pushed himself up. The deck warned him again. Gravity variance detected. Ryan did not wait this time. He moved around the champion in tight circles, never striking hard, never wasting motion, touching armor seams, redirecting wrists, stepping away before Draxon could grab him. Every time Draxon tried to use power, Ryan gave that power somewhere embarrassing to go. Into a wall pad, into empty space, into the floor, into his own locked joints. It was not a fight the way Varnathi understood fighting. It was maintenance. Ryan was not overpowering the champion. He was correcting him. After the 4th failed rush, Draxon stopped smiling. After the 5th, he stopped roaring. After the 6th, he stood in the center of the bay with his arms lowered, chest rising hard, finally understanding that the small human had not been lucky. Ryan picked up a loose restraint cuff from the floor and tossed it gently at Draxon's feet. Last offer, he said. Sit down. Draxon looked toward the helmet camera, toward Commander Varek, toward the entire bridge watching him become a lesson. Then Ryan took 1 step forward. Just one. The champion sat down. The strangest thing about watching Champion Draxon sit down was not that he obeyed. It was that Ryan Walker immediately stopped treating him like an enemy. The human stepped back, lowered the gravity profile to normal transit level, and checked the room as if making sure nobody had tripped over a toolbox. Then he walked to Draxon, picked up the restraint cuff, and clipped it to the champion's own belt instead of his wrists. Stay seated, Ryan said. Breathe slow. Your inner ear is probably mad at you. Draxon blinked at him, stunned beyond pride. Lieutenant Core and the other Marines stared from the floor, still secured by their own gear, and none of them said a word. They had come aboard expecting a civilian. They had found a man who could turn their training, their armor, and their confidence into bad decisions without raising his voice. On the Black Talon, Commander Varek Thorn stood so sharply his command chair slid backward. Cut that feed. Nobody moved. They were all too busy watching Ryan pick up his coffee mug, take one careful sip, and look into the helmet camera again. Commander Thorn, he said, your people are alive, calm, and about to be returned to you with only their pride needing medical attention. I strongly recommend you accept that as a win. That sentence did more damage to Varek than any weapon could have managed. His face darkened beneath the bridge lights. His officers saw it. Senior Advisor Rel saw it. I saw it, and immediately wished I had requested a transfer to weather monitoring. Lock tractor beams on the human vessel, Varek ordered. The tactical officer hesitated. Commander, the Cedar Falls is classified medical civilian. Tractor seizure would trigger. Lock beams. The officer obeyed. Invisible force caught the Cedar Falls and held it in place. The human ship trembled slightly on the display, not from weakness, but from restraint. Like a dog being held by the collar before it decides the collar is optional. Ryan looked up as the cargo bay lights flickered. That is your next mistake. Varek opened a direct channel. You are now under Varnathi authority. Surrender your vessel, release my personnel, and prepare to be transferred. Ryan listened politely. He even nodded once, which gave Varek the fatal impression that he was being taken seriously. No, Ryan said. One word. Flat. Simple. American as a locked front door. Varek's jaw tightened. You are one man. Correct. On one small ship. Also correct. Against a cruiser. Ryan set the coffee down and finally stepped closer to the camera. His calm did not change, but something behind it sharpened. Not anger. Decision. Commander, you keep thinking this is about size. That is why you are losing. Varek gestured to tactical. Increase tractor pressure by 20%. The Cedar Falls groaned softly. A few medical crates shifted against their straps. Ryan's eyes moved to them. For the first time, his expression lost warmth. Only a little. Just enough that every survival instinct on our bridge woke up at the same time. He walked to the wall panel beside the cargo bay door and pressed his thumb against a plain metal reader. The system asked for authorization. His voice stayed level. Walker, Ryan Michael. Earth Relief Logistics. Civilian Priority Safeguard. Record unlawful interdiction of medical transport and attempted seizure by armed foreign vessel. Rel inhaled sharply. Varek snapped. What did he just activate? The tactical officer went pale. It is not a weapon. That should have comforted us. It did not. Ryan looked back at the camera. No, he said. It is worse. It is a receipt. Then the Cedar Falls stopped trembling. Not because the tractor beam released it, but because the human ship pushed back. The Cedar Falls pushed back with the quiet confidence of a machine that had been underestimated by people who only respected sharp edges. On our tactical display, the tractor beam lines should have held steady, clean blue arcs binding the little medical hauler to the black talon. Instead, those arcs bent. Not broke. Bent, like someone had placed a thumb against reality and slowly applied pressure. The tactical officer whispered, "That is impossible." Senior Advisor Rel answered without looking away from the screen. "No, that is human engineering." Commander Varek spun toward him. "It is a cargo ship. It is a human cargo ship," Rel said, and for once nobody corrected him. Across the open channel, Ryan Walker moved through the Cedar Falls cargo bay with calm efficiency, checking crate straps, securing loose tools, and speaking to his own ship like it was a stubborn pickup truck on a cold morning. "Come on, girl," he muttered. "Just enough." The ship answered with a low vibration. The tractor beams flickered. Then every screen on our bridge flashed amber. External transmission detected. Civilian priority safeguard packet released. Destination: Human Defense Network, local authorities, medical route registry, insurance arbitration, and nearest Earth-aligned vessels. The room froze. Not because of the military channels. Because of the insurance arbitration. There is something uniquely terrifying about a species that sends a distress alert and a billing notice at the same time. Varek pointed at communications. "Block it." My hands moved before my brain finished screaming. I tried to jam the packet. The system rejected me. I tried to bury it under false traffic. It split into 12 mirrored signals. I tried to label it as corrupted civilian noise. It came back stamped with legal verification, medical priority, diplomatic timestamp, and one cheerful line of human text. "Nice try." Ryan glanced at his wall display and gave a tired little nod. Good enough. Then space around us changed. At first, nothing arrived. That was what made it worse. No dramatic fleet jumping in. No blazing formation. No heroic music. Just markers. One by one, red and white icons appeared on the edge of our sensor range. A mining tug. A survey cutter. 2 courier boats. A farm colony patrol skiff. A private salvage vessel with engines older than Verek's career. A school transport rerouting from 50,000 miles away. Then more. 30, 60, 100. None of them were warships by our classification. That was the joke. Our classification was useless. Every human vessel that received the packet turned toward us with the same cold mathematical patience. Their transponders stayed civilian. Their targeting solutions did not. The tactical officer's voice cracked. Commander, we are being painted by 147 separate systems. Verek snapped. Civilian systems cannot threaten a cruiser. Rel finally turned to him, and the old advisor looked less afraid than sad. Humans do not separate civilian and dangerous the way we do. On the Cedar Falls, Ryan finished securing the last medical crate and walked back to the camera. Behind him, Draxon sat very still. Lieutenant Kor stared at the floor like he was reconsidering every lesson he had ever been taught. Ryan picked up his brown jacket and put it on. Commander Thorne, he said, you have about 10 seconds before every human within 1,000,000 miles decides you are not confused, just committed. Verek opened his mouth. No order came out. For the first time since I had served under him, he looked at the screen and saw not a small ship, not a cargo clerk, not a soft mammal from Earth. He saw a tripwire. Ryan's voice softened. That somehow made it worse. Release my ship. Take your people home. Learn something. The bridge waited. The universe waited with it. Then Senior Advisor Rel reached past the frozen commander and entered the release command himself. The tractor beams vanished. The Cedar Falls drifted free, tiny, ordinary, and surrounded by the attention of a species nobody sane provoked twice. The official report called it a navigational misunderstanding, because governments are cowards when paperwork has witnesses. The real recording spread faster. Not through public networks at first. Military academies got it. Pirate captains got it. Border governors got it. Every ambitious officer with a map, a ship, and a dangerous amount of confidence watched Commander Verek Thorne challenge one human medical hauler and discover that Earth did not need to raise its voice to be terrifying. The Cedar Falls stayed in place for 12 more minutes after the tractor beams released, not because Ryan Walker needed to, but because he was waiting for the transfer shuttle to retrieve the Varnathi personnel from his cargo bay. He returned them all. Lieutenant Kor, the 5 Marines, and Champion Draxon walked back under their own power, quiet, humbled, and medically fine, which somehow made the embarrassment worse. Ryan even handed Kor a sealed bag containing every restraint device, every drop tool, and one printed inventory receipt. At the bottom, in plain English, he had written, "Please stop leaving things on my ship." When the airlock finally closed, Ryan appeared on our main screen one last time. Commander Verek refused to look at him, so Senior Advisor Rel accepted the call. Ryan gave the old advisor another small nod. Your people are clear. I am continuing to the clinic on Halden 4. Their pediatric wing is waiting on these supplies. Rel's voice was careful. Mr. Walker, on behalf of this vessel, I apologize. Ryan studied him for a moment. Apology noted. That was all. No speech. No threat. No victory pose. He did not need one. Around us, the human civilian vessels remained on their new headings until the Cedar Falls turned safely back into its route. Only then did they peel away, one by one, returning to ordinary lives with terrifying discipline. The mining tug went back to hauling ore. The school transport resumed its field trip. The old salvage ship returned to whatever questionable scrap job had paid for its fuel. None of them fired. None of them bragged. They simply proved they had been willing. That was the part the galaxy remembered. Verek was removed from command within the week. Officially, he accepted a strategic review assignment on a quiet moon. Unofficially, he became the reason young officers stopped laughing during human response doctrine. I was called before the Varnathi High Council as a communications witness, and they asked me the same forbidden question he had asked. Only this time nobody smiled. Why are humans never attacked? I told them the truth. Not because humans are the largest. They are not. Not because every human is a trained warrior. They are not. Not because their ships are always armed. Sometimes they are carrying baby medicine, coffee, and a tired man in an old jacket. Humans are not avoided because they look like monsters. They are avoided because they do not abandon each other. Touch one, and the others turn. Threaten one, and the quiet ones wake up. Hurt one, and distance becomes a suggestion, law becomes a weapon, and every civilian becomes a line you should not have crossed. The council chamber stayed silent after that. Then Rel, old and tired and finally vindicated, said the sentence that entered every academy textbook by morning. Earth is not protected by treaties. Earth is protected by humans. And that was when the galaxy stopped asking why nobody attacked them.